Hello friends, welcome back in our economics module. My name is Ninad Pandit and I am the faculty at Savarkar IAS Study Circle. So, as you know, till last lecture we have covered types of economies. Before that, we dealt with Great Depression, South Asian crisis and introduction part of economics, right? So from now onwards, we have very important topics of economics, that is macroeconomics and microeconomics. So today we'll start with macroeconomics. I have divided microeconomics in 6 parts. As I told you previously, whenever we will start macro and micro, we will deal with Indian economics and world economics in that respective topic. Alright, so we won't be requiring to deal these Indian and world economics separately. Alright, so as I told you, I have divided macroeconomics into 6 parts. The first is terminology, the terms which are important for us to understand in the course of action to understand the macroeconomics, right? Then we have quantitative measures of economics. Quantitative measures, which means which can be termed in numbers like GDP, GNP, etc. There are many, right? Then we have qualitative measures such as World Happiness Index or Gross Happiness Index, also we call it as Poverty Index, likewise, etc. Then we'll be discussing about Indian macroeconomic development, how Indian macroeconomic or Indian regulatory systems of economics evolved and developed over the course of time. Then later on, economic reforms and committees with respect to India again. Economic reforms such as GST, for example, the latest example, right? And there were various committees which gave suggestions to government to implement the reforms. And in the last part, we'll be dealing with world macroeconomics, where we'll be again discussing various crises which gave broader look to world about the macroeconomic development. Alright, so these are the 6 topics which we'll be discussing for macroeconomic development. And once you understand these 6 topics of macroeconomics, it will be very easy for you to understand the macroeconomic development of a particular country. Alright, so without wasting more time, let's start with our macroeconomic chapter. Now, before starting with sub-chapters of macroeconomics, first let's understand what do you mean by macroeconomics, right? As I told you previously, there are 2 broad classifications of economics, that is macro and micro, right? So macroeconomics means when it is taken economy as a broader entity. Broader entity means if government is coming out with policies for all citizens in our country, so it will be dealt as a macroeconomic policy. Whereas if we are targeting particular individual at the household, suppose if we are targeting a place having 4 or more people or a house, so if we are coming out with a strategy of, if we are coming out with a plan for them, we will be calling it as a microeconomic policy. Macroeconomic, which means when we are dealing India as a whole country and we will be planning for complete India. Alright, not a specific entity, but we will be planning India as a whole entity. So it's the broader entity. Macroeconomics is a broader entity as compared to microeconomics. That's the meaning, that's the reason why we are starting with macroeconomic first, and later on we'll deal with microeconomics. Alright, so the first chapter of macroeconomics that we are going to start, that is terminologies. Terminologies will be useful for you in the course of action of economics sessions. So that's the reason why we are dealing this terminologies part at the initial period. There are total 21 terminologies. They are very easy, no need to worry. Alright, so these 21 terminologies we are going to understand one by one. Alright, so let's start with the first one. The first terminology is resources. Okay, now you might be thinking that why we are discussing about resources, but it's very important part. If you remember in our second lecture where we discussed about money and paper currency, in current scenario, paper currency is most probably and related to resources of that particular country. Okay, But one more thing which you need to understand, that's the reason why I am discussing this resources terminology in the initial part. See, the mere possession, the only possession of resources does not mean the country is wealthy or rich country, because till the time these resources don't go into the production phase and come out with some commodity, those resources won't have any value. Like for example, in African continent, countries like Algeria, Egypt, Libya, Chad, they have ample amount of resources like diamond, iron ore, uranium. Like Sahara Desert, it's spread all over the northern African part. So Sahara Desert is a very good place for iron or for uranium, which is used in the nuclear power plants or for the nuclear weapons also. Alright, so till the time these countries don't have technology that can convert or that can use this uranium for power generation, this mere possession of uranium won't be useful, right? In the same way, in Latin America also, Latin America, which means the South America part, where the countries like Venezuela, Brazil, these countries come, they also have ample amount of resources such as metals, bauxite, coca beans, which you also call as a coffee, which we used to make, right? So they have ample amount of resources, these Latin American countries as well as the African continent countries. But due to the lack of technology and lack of educational facilities also, they don't have the manufacturing plants which will convert these resources into some market value, where these resources can be used by someone as a final product, right? So you can see in the world there is a disparity between these countries and developed countries like USA, UK, Japan, Switzerland. Japan does not have mineral contents or metal resources with them, but still they are developed ones. If you see UK, they have rare resources of coal, that's all, and that too anthracite coal. UK have anthracite is a kind of coal which is of highest quality, alright. But still, so to come on point, so these nations like USA, Switzerland, UK, Japan, they don't have as many resources as these African continent or Latin American countries they have, but still they are the developed ones. This is the irony, right? Why they are developed? Because the manufacturing unit in these regions are developed, their technologies are developed, education is developed, so they are the developed countries in the world at this moment without having the resources, right? So that's the reason what I told you at the first instance, the first statement, that mere possession of resources won't make your country rich, alright. These resources must go into the production phase, like iron ore in Africa in ample amount, but still if you don't have car or if you don't have a manufacturing unit of car, how you are going to use it? The same way, natural gas is also in abundant amount, natural gas and oil, abundant amount in Venezuela and African countries also. But still, if you don't have cars on your road, where you are going to use this natural gas or petroleum products, right? So resources must go in the production phase. That's the way how your country becomes rich, which will be helpful for your macroeconomics again. Alright. Now the second term is final goods. Final goods, just to give you a basic example, these are the goods which are not consumed once they are sold, or they are not used in the production process once they are sold. Which means, if I am going in the market, I am buying any vegetable, or if I am buying any bread, alright, so I am not going to going to convert that bread into some entity or commodity where I'll be going and selling that product to someone else. I'm not going to come at home, I am going to use jam, putting on bread, and will go and sell outside. As an individual, I won't be doing that part, right? So final goods are called as when somebody uses the product and this does not go into the production process. Which means when I get bread, it does not require more manufacturing. right? It's the final good. We don't have to process something on that bread and will come out with some new product in the market, right? Cars, final goods. Bicycles, final goods, right? So these are the final goods where we don't go into the manufacturing or the production process once they are bought. These final goods have three subtypes. Okay, the first one I'll be pointing it out as the third one. The first one is consumption goods. Consumption goods. Then the fourth, as a fourth terminology, okay, the fourth one is capital goods, and the fifth one is consumer durable. Okay, we are dividing this three types into final goods itself. All right. So let's understand first that is what is consumption goods. These three goods are final goods. All right. We are divided these three things based on their characteristic. Okay. So consumption goods. Consumption goods, best example, clothes. Okay. Clothes, vegetables, fruits. Okay, which are consumed by individual like us. When we go into market, and we go and we buy something, we don't think about recreating something new stuff, right? We just buy it because we want to consume that particular entity. As I give you the example of bread, the previous final good part, right? So these goods like clothes, vegetables, fruits, if you go in the market, you buy onions, potatoes. So whenever you buy these parts, what you do, you go and you consume those parts and you make some vegetable and you eat it, right? So these are the final ones, but which are consumed by individual. Okay, again they are not going into any production procedure, any new production procedure, or any new goods is not coming out. All right, so this is what is called as consumption goods. All right, so next one is capital goods. There are few final goods which we use in the production procedure, but in what production procedure? We create something new of some another entity. Capital goods, which means Xerox machines, right? Then you have machineries in factories which used for creating some new entity. So these machineries or Xerox machine, what I told you just now, are the final goods, but they are creating some capital, they are making something, but still they are the final goods, right? They are not going into a production procedure, means these machines are not getting modified into something new, but they are making something, they are making some capital out of them, right? So that's the reason why we call it as a capital goods, which are used in industries mainly. Alright, and the third one is consumer durables. It is same like capital goods, but are used by a consumer, like consumption. Who is using? Individual is using, right? Like us, you, me, other individuals who are living, who are doing some another job, who are doing any job and they are getting salary, and they are using some commodities for their own consumption. Alright, so consumer durables are same like capital good. Alright, but for example, we buy TV, refrigerator, they are durable, right? You get TV and it is consumed within a day. This does not happen, right? Like vegetables. Alright, so they are durables, they last for some long time. Bike you buy, this is a consumer durable. Microwave you get, that is a consumer durable. Refrigerator, consumer durable, which is used by a consumer, which is used for a long period of time. Like capital goods, capital goods are also used for a long period of time, right? The same way consumer durables are used. Now there is the sixth concept or the sixth terminology, depreciation. Okay, now understand this depreciation term with respect to capital goods and consumer durables. Alright, I'll give you example for both. Okay, depreciation, which means, see, understand, if you have a capital good, I have an industry, I am having a machine which have a life of 10 years. This is one example of capital good. Alright, the second example for consumer durable, I have a bike which also have a life of 10 years, within 10 years, after 10 years, its value becomes zero. That's what is the life cycle of that particular capital good or consumer durable. That's the maximum time you can use that. Alright. So if I suppose that machine have a value of 100 rupees and consumer durable, that is a bike, have the value of 200 rupees. Okay. This capital good, this machine which is used in industry, have the lifespan of suppose 10 years, and this bike also have a lifespan of 10 years. Alright. Now to give you a best example, I'll explain you about this part. But if any one of you have a bike and car, you can see on your insurance paper that depreciated value. Each year the value depreciates of that particular commodity. So how do they decide each year how much value will be depreciated from that particular X amount of good? That's the formula. Suppose I bought this or somebody industrial bought machinery for 100 rupees. 10 years is the lifespan of that machinery. Then 100 divided by 10, which will give us 10 rupees. So 10 rupees is the depreciation value per year. Okay. So whenever that insurance company insures that product, and the same way for consumer durable, that is bike example I gave you, that is 200 rupees bike, 10 years lifespan. So each year the value of bike will depreciate by 20 rupees. Okay. So whenever insurance company insures the product, suppose you have a bike and that bike for first year you got an insurance, that insurance was completely for 200 rupees because that was the first year, no depreciation in your bike's value, because it goes into wear and tear. Wear and tear, which means you use that bike for a year, obviously its parts and engine will be used, and it won't be same like when you bought it in the initial period, right? So that's what we called as wear and tear. Wear and tear. Okay. So this wear and tear value of bike is 20 rupees. So for first year you will be having insurance of 200 rupees, but next year the value of bike will become 200 minus 20, because 1 year you used it. So the value of bike will be depreciated by 20, right? So it will become 180. Next year again it will depreciate by 20, so it will become 160. The same way for capital goods also. First year 100 rupees, next year it will become 90 rupees, next year 80 rupees, 70, the same way. So once you reach to this 10-year point, the value of that capital good or consumer durable becomes zero, because it is consumed to its fullest. Okay, that's what its lifespan is. So these capital goods and consumer durables goes into wear and tear, and the value gets depreciated. This is what is called as depreciation value. I hope you understood this. Okay, so let's move to the next terminology, that is the seventh one. See, first is resources, then final goods, then consumption goods, capital goods, consumer durable, depreciation value, and then the seventh one is intermediate goods. Okay, intermediate goods. Now whenever you see any final good, it have various goods used in that production procedure, right? So whatever clothes you are wearing, it is made from cotton. So cotton is the intermediate good for a cloth or a final t-shirt or shirt or whatever it is. Okay, the same way steel is the intermediate goods in automobile, cars, bike, truck, etc. Okay, copper is also a good, final good it can be, but it will be an intermediate good for a utensils. Utensil will be again a final good, but copper will be intermediate good which is used for producing the final good. So the goods which are used in the production procedure of that final good, these goods are called as intermediate goods. Alright, it's easy to understand, right? So let's move to next concept, which is bit important and will be helpful for you to understand how economy grows. Okay, so 8.1, circular flow in the economy. Okay. So to understand this part, let's have an example. Like we have firms, okay, firms, industries, alright, manufacturing unit or any firm, and we have households. Households means individual house. Okay, what does firms do? Firms provide salaries to household, right? Firms will provide salaries to you. When they will provide salaries to you? When you will provide some kind of service to them, right? You provide service to them, they make profit. From that profit they give you salary, alright. Again, one more thing firm provides you, that is goods or products, right, which you are only created by giving your service. They provide goods or final goods or products to you. In return you provide spending. You spend on these products, right? So ultimately you provide spending to them, they provide good to you. So this is the circular flow in the economy, right? Firms give you salary, you give service to them. Again they give you products, you spend on them the salary which is given by them. Ultimately you spend on these products, but it is decided by you where to expense. That's the only thing, that's the only difference, right? So this flow in the economy makes economy stronger and growth in the economy takes place. How the growth will take place? If firm starts producing more and more commodities, what you will do, what you will get, you will provide more service or you will get more salary in return of that. The same way you will get more goods in the market, alright. So your purchasing power will increase because your salary is increased, so you will expense more. That is how economy grows. You get more and more money in your hand so that your purchasing power increases, right? So this circular flow in the economy keeps economy driving, alright. So I hope till the time we have discussed these 8 concepts, 8 terminologies, we are yet to discuss more 13. We'll discuss these terminologies in our next session. By that time, stay tuned, stay healthy, and thank you very much.